Joined now by Tyler Harris for Hoosiers for Good, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and the Wow Club. Make sure you go there, sign up, and get your Wow Club dining dollars and discounts sent directly to your mobile app on your phone. Tyler Harris joins us now from Hoosiers for Good. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. It's a little bit less crazy this week than it was last week. But yeah, it's doing well. I appreciate you having me, Jim.
Yeah, great to have you on, Tyler. You're the executive director, and in the break, I was asking. This started out as it's a lot of people volunteering their time, but this is becoming an entity. So this is your full-time job now.
Yeah. We're a nonprofit, so we have a board of directors. Pete Yonkman is the president. Calbert Cheney's the vice president of the board. Wes Jones is our treasurer. And Allison Jordan is our secretary, and then we have a few more board members, and then Fred Glass is our legal counsel, and then I'm the sole employee of Hoosiers for Good. Started March 7th, so it's been a little busy since March 7th, but it's going well.
I doubt that very few NIL consortia, whatever they are called, around the country. I mean, there's not a ton of them yet. I mean, there are the smarter schools are getting, like Indiana, are getting out in front of this, but even those that are, I don't know how many that are where Indiana is. I mean, you've got someone like yourself who is a former head of compliance, who is a former college basketball player. You worked for the NCAA. They've got a former athletics director on there, and a former All-American. I mean, they've got a little bit of everything on there. It just seems like, I have to say, Indiana's done a lot of things wrong in sports over the last several years. And that's why they are in a lot of places. But this doesn't seem to be one of them. They seem to be doing this pretty right.
I can't take credit for it, but it was certainly well thought out. Pete put a lot of time and effort into thinking through this, with Fred as well. So yeah, I think it's very well thought out. And we made our initial announcement on March 8th, and that's when we announced, we're gonna engage in this endeavor, but it's gonna be a charitable focus. And I think since then I've seen probably 3 more collectives, trusts, whatever you want to call them, come out with a charitable focus. And so this model will continue to evolve. But I like to think we're at the top of the list in terms of helping craft the evolution of how this should be done, right? The Hoosier way, and where everybody really wins.
Yeah, and this is Indiana is a program that should always be up there, but they haven't been for a while. And I said earlier on the show that this is something that I think will help it get Indiana back there quicker. They should already have been there, but they're not. But it just seems like this is helping them in a lot of areas. I don't know about other sports, but as far as men's basketball, it's definitely going to pay great dividends. And I know you all don't, that's not your view, how you look at it, but it is how fans look at it.
Yeah, we're certainly broad-based. We want this endeavor to benefit all student athletes, but at the same time, it's not one size fits all. And while we're not in the recruiting space, certainly kids in high school see that there's opportunities here, and for us, I think frankly, it's not only is it the opportunity to become a Hoosiers for Good athlete. Another added benefit is you're building your brand in a charitable way. And that's super important, because there's a lot of ways to hurt your brand this day and age. I can promise you charitable participation is not one of them.
No. And you guys announced your inaugural class that you called it last week. And I asked in the break, is that going to be, are you going to add them as you go, or you're just going to come out with classes?
Yeah, I think the idea is to have 2 classes a year. And in our initial class, it was 14 student athletes. And I think the number will end up being right around 30, each year. And then another aspect of what we're doing, which to my knowledge, no one across the country does, but really just demonstrates our values is we have a charitable incubator program that's really going to involve any student athlete who doesn't yet have a platform or a voice to submit a proposal about a charity that they're passionate about, and we'll help help amplify through that student athlete's voice the charitable awareness.
And the charities, I'm sure that they're just over the moon with this, because this is great for them, and it is tremendous. And it's great for the athletes. It gives them a taste, if they haven't done that or not doing that, a taste of doing that and what that's like, and giving back. And I know that's obviously an important thing for you guys, and it ties it all together. But how do you select the charities, and how do you select the athletes?
No, that's a good question. 5 charities had already partnered, with us before I came on board, and as you can imagine, through that time since our initial announcement, and with the first class, more charitable organizations have reached out, and I don't envision we'll ever get to a point where we're not wanting to partner with a charity. The more the better, and really, a lot of the charities now that we've since partnered with, they don't have a lot of resources, and this endeavor will hopefully raise awareness for those charitable organizations, because there's a model for charitable organizations that if you have resources, you're going to be able to do well, and make people aware of your mission and the clients you serve, and hopefully this model will help those charitable organizations that don't have a voice out there yet, or people don't know about them. In terms of the student athletes, thankfully, my previous role as the head of compliance, I got to talk to a lot of student athletes, and I know them personally, and so with that, I was able to quickly see which student athletes had a passion and an ambition to really raise awareness for charities, right, and using their NIL in that way. And so, a lot of it is behind the scenes, where I'll talk to student athletes on the phone. I'll, talk to them in person, make sure that they're a good partner with us, and that, they really care about adding value. And so this first class, broad based, and every single student athlete was very excited to be able to be a part of this.
And I don't. Are there clauses in there that hey, you've got to not get in trouble, not do things like that? Not that they need it. I'm just saying, are those included? I would think that if they're involved in something, especially like this, that you're tied into charity work and all that, you definitely want people who are not getting in trouble. That doesn't happen a lot, but obviously we see it from time to time. Is that part of this where you're saying, hey guys, you got to keep your nose clean?
Yeah, that's certainly within the agreement. There's termination with cause, termination without cause. All those standard agreement language is in there, as well as all the deliverables that are required of them. And I can't take credit for that, right? I'm not a lawyer, but Fred, I thought, did a really good job drafting that to be aware and to be able to move if we needed to, if something did happen.
And then we've talked about this, probably going to happen twice a year. With that being the proposed model, and nothing's written in stone, I know, but with recruits, like say men's basketball, how are they going to be able to involve themselves into a guy that's not here yet, that they're trying to recruit?
Yeah, I'm not sure how IU will use this endeavor. But I know for us specifically, we'll focus on student athletes that are already enrolled at IU. Okay. And that second class could be newcomers. It could be guys that have been there for a while. It really boils down to, we're only interested in selecting student athletes who really care about this, want to do things positive, but also have a platform to raise awareness.
And then what are some of the charities that you guys are working with?
Yeah, so right now we have 8 charitable partners, and throughout these next couple of weeks, that list will grow. But it's Riley Children's Foundation, Indiana Wish, Habitat for Humanity, Indiana Region of the American Red Cross, Turnstone, Stop the Violence Indianapolis, Boys and Girls Club of Bloomington, and Recycle Force are the 8 right now.
And obviously, we saw the inaugural class. Most of the names, if you're an Indiana fan, at least you know virtually all those names. Some of them you may not because they're smaller sports, but at least the bigger sports: soccer, baseball, basketball, women's basketball, football. A lot of names that we expected to see on there. What are they expected to do now this summer? I mean, obviously, you have a relationship set up with these charities. Is it incumbent upon them to do that? Do you guys continue to manage for them? How does that work?
I'll be there every step of the way. And so the student athletes have a certain number of required in-person appearances that they're going to have to do at their charitable partner. And that can be at any point. We felt it was important not to put specific dates. It's not fair for a student athlete to know what they're going to be doing on September 11th. So in terms of the deliverables within the agreement, we've got a certain number of in-person appearances that would be required at their charitable partner, campus autograph sessions and presentation of skills, or the like. And then a required number of social media posts to raise awareness via social media for those charities they're partnering with.
What's the most important thing that the fans need to know about Hoosiers for Good? Because there's a lot of things that get said that aren't true, and this and that, and I want to make sure that I don't say anything that's not correct. But is there any misconceptions that you've heard out there that you want to make sure that, hey, that's not true, this is how it is, etc.?
I think it's just NIL in general, right? There's certain category of folks that just don't like it, and that's fine. And then there's certain category of folks that do like it. It's here, and it's not going.
I was getting ready to say those two words exactly. It's here, people. Get over it.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. But so we can use this NIL and that flexibility student athletes have to really raise awareness for good causes. And that's truly the Indiana way, right? I mean, we care about doing things the right way. We care about developing IU student athletes into community-minded leaders, and that's why I think Pete thought this out really well, because this is truly the Indiana way, and so it's here, and we're going to provide opportunities to student athletes, but they're going to work and they're going to add value to charities and raise awareness.
So what are you guys, well, I know everyone has their different jobs, but so what is Hoosiers for Good doing now? I know you've got the current class to manage, but now you've got another class you have to plan for. Is that expected to be announced in the fall?
Yeah. In the fall, we thought it was important, there's a fundraising component to this. And we thought it was important to be able to, before we went out and asked people for money, to really show them what we're doing and show the importance of what we're doing. And so we thought it was important to announce the first class to show, the fan base, how important this endeavor is. And it's NIL, but it's also, there's a lot of benefits to doing what we're doing. So now I'm going to be switching my gears to fundraising. And hopefully there's a lot of support for what we're doing. And then we'll turn our attention late summer probably to start getting ready for that second class.
I know it's been a short time, but in the short time that it's been here, what's the biggest impact you've seen from the inside?
I think the biggest impact was just seeing how supportive student athletes were of what we were doing, and also how appreciative our charitable partners were, right? It's free marketing for them. And so the biggest and the most exciting thing that I have encountered yet is, one, talking to parents and hearing how they're just so excited for their son or daughter to participate in this opportunity. But then also student athletes, I've had several student athletes tell me, I would do this for free. And while that's a nice sentiment, it's NIL's here, and we want to be providing them compensation for all their work. But I just think that goes to show you that the student athletes are really passionate about doing this. And that's been the really exciting part.
Yeah, and well, they're also passionate about being able to, and I don't mean this in a negative way, about being able to make money, because it was so archaic before. And I'm kind of laughing at how eagerly and welcoming the schools are. And I'm not talking about Indiana, I'm talking about the schools around the country, how welcoming they are when they are the ones that held this back for all these years. It was not the NCAA, because the schools are the NCAA. It's kind of funny,
Right.
in
No,
in a very ironic way.
yeah, and that's certainly a misconception, right? Everybody, the NCAA is a punching bag where everybody goes to, and the reality is the NCAA doesn't make the rules. They're not the ones that are doing that. It's all the member schools that are coming together to make those rules, and so I know the student athletes are super excited. I've seen some creative ways that they're engaging in NIL in my previous role, and I just think it's certainly the time has come. Should have been done a long time ago, especially when a student athlete can walk into their classroom and see one of their peer students engaging in the same, engaging in NIL, but they couldn't because they were a student athlete. And so time has come. It's here. It's not changing, and so hopefully, everybody will embrace that, but in a way that we're going to positively impact a lot of people and in a lot of charitable organizations.
And now, what going through the summer? I asked earlier about next new class. How I asked earlier how you select them, but as you're going to and see, so 30, so probably another 15. How do you integrate that in? And I asked part of this too with athletes that aren't here but are coming in the fall. How do you make that integration?
Yeah, that's certainly in part one of the reasons why we said the fall. Is to encompass maybe some incoming student athletes who we don't want to get involved in the recruiting space. That's not what this is about. But maybe when they're here, we find out they do have a passion and they do have a voice. They have a platform to raise awareness. And so I think the fall signing class, again, we'll be focusing on kids who are already enrolled, but those incoming student athletes will have been enrolled at that point.
How do you guys determine the value paid to a specific person versus another person? And obviously, for the people that say this will cause problems on teams, I say that's horse crap, because it's time to get real, people. It's real life. And I said this earlier, whatever job you work, there are people that make more money than you do. It's just life. It's just life. And so I don't understand. No, there should not be any dissension. In fact, you can have people that aren't even good making money. It's about contacts, man. You can go out and make the deals. So I'm not believing in that. But how do you all guys determine who's paid what?
Yeah, NIL really exposes the real world, right? I mean, and that's where student athletes will have to learn that, it's time to grow up. This is the real world. This is how the real world works. In terms of how we select, we have certain metrics, right? We want to make sure that we are falling back on something to defend the amount we're given. And so, some of the metrics would be name recognition. That's an obvious one. Social media influence, the program that they're associated with and that program's social media influence. Will this student athlete help give us national exposure or the charitable partners national exposure? And so we used all that metrics to come up with a reasonable range. And that's really what we fall back on. And I would imagine a lot of people do it that way. Those are some easy metrics to fall back on.
Should I have my opinion on this? And I'm asking, this is almost a rhetorical question. I already know the answer that you're going to respond with, so I'll follow it with another question. Should INL, the amounts paid to athletes, be made public, and why not?
Well,
assuming your answer is going to be no.
I'll throw a little curveball at you, and it's really a non-answer, but I think it's important to keep this in mind. Is for so long, college athletics have been in trouble for treating student athletes differently than their peers, or different, having overly restrictive rules. And so I think the legal system right now would make it very hard to defend why student athletes at colleges have to disclose, or their public transparency, versus when there's not in the professional system or there's not in the high school system. So I think the legal landscape makes that challenging. I see benefits to both ways, and really it's a non-answer, but I do see benefits to both ways. You want public transparency, to curb the malfeasance in recruiting, just the ungodly amounts that just aren't reasonable. But then you also don't, because some people are sensitive to locker room dynamics. And so I get both sides. I don't have a persuasive opinion on either. I just think the legal landscape makes it challenging to have some sort of mechanism to do that.
What are you looking to do next? What are you working on when you get off of here?
Fundraising, right? We're providing some awesome opportunities, and we need support to be able to continue to provide those awesome opportunities. And so that's super important. We're certainly providing. I think we have the best model set up out there, but there's certainly models that are for profit or partnering student athletes businesses, and even some charitable organizations that can provide bigger opportunities or more opportunities. And for us to be broad-based and provide really meaningful opportunities, we got to switch gears to fundraising, and hopefully there'll be a lot of support, because this is NIL, but the Hoosier way, and it's a good way.
And I know that you're in what your position is, that your viewpoint, how you're dealing with your job, and that's what you're doing. You're not looking at the stuff that the fans are thinking and how they see, and athletes that they like to see come to IU and all that. But the biggest sport is football in college around the country. Not in Indiana, but around the country, it's football, and it's just not at IU. And I'm worried that from someone that covers Indiana, for Indiana, I think the NIL is going to hurt them as from a competition level, because I think that the Michigans and those other, there's going to be a little bit more separation than there was before on the football side of things, and that has nothing to do with the Hoosiers for good. That's just an opinion I have on NIL. I don't know if you think Hoosiers for Good would be able to provide the kind of support to Indiana football that it will to Indiana basketball, because those are two different entities.
Yeah,
apples and oranges, and I'll acknowledge those are apples and oranges that we're comparing here.
Right. NIL is another factor in anybody's recruitment or retention, right? That's just another component that has to be, that kids are thinking through, or young men and women are thinking through. And you're right, from a football standpoint, it probably makes it more challenging at Indiana. But we've got a model that's set up that, if there's a lot of support for what we're doing, we're certainly going to be providing opportunities to everyone, including Indiana football, because we are broad-based. But the obvious component of that is football players, from a social media standpoint, add value, because they can raise awareness for charitable partners. They've got social media followings, they've got name recognition, they've got the program that they're associated with, their social media following, all those factors that we talked about for basketball, football has as well. And so I would envision we're continuing to evaluate and provide opportunities to football student athletes who want to be involved and create value.
Man, I cannot thank you enough, Tyler. Appreciate you so much, and look forward to having you on again to keep up with what's going on, because it's a changing landscape. It seems every day there's something new, or not rule changes every day, but it just is such a new era that we're going into, because not only do you have the NIL, you got this transfer portal at the same time, which with the NIL, they're not signed to a school. They can't be required to attend a school. But obviously, these things are done wherever in conjunction with schools. I mean, that's kind of common sense. We know that. What can you do to try to make it to enhance them to stay, I guess you would say, or could an NIL, not Hoosiers for Good per se, and any NIL do to enhance athletes staying as opposed to going elsewhere?
Yeah, you're certainly right. Right. One of the, we're in Indiana, a state that does not have a state law. So our applicable regulatory authority is the NCAA and their interim policy. And you briefly touched on it, right? We can't provide NIL compensation contingent on initial or continued enrollment. And so I think opportunities, right? I think that is, if you're trying to do things the right way, and not making things contingent, the opportunity itself adds value. And so I think that's where we come in. I'm not going to sit here and say every collective operates the way we're operating, and
because they don't.
but it is important to me because of my background and because of just Indiana Hoosier Nation, right? Like they care about doing things the right way. And so we're going to do that. But at the same time, we're going to provide great opportunities to student athletes at IU that are going to be able to amplify a charitable organization. And if they decide that opportunity is worthwhile for them, to stay at Indiana or leave, whatever's really, truly, it's whatever's best for them. It's their decision, right? We shouldn't be using this to influence a kid's future. And so, we're gonna do it the right way. But providing or showing that there's opportunities obviously there's an inherent, impact with that.
And I know that you're in a tough position because you work for Hoosiers for Good. You no longer work for Indiana University. You used to be an employee and you took this job. And this is not an Indiana University company per se, but it is in essence a handshake or so, however people want to describe it. I mean, I know what it is, and I think most people know what it is. But they talk about NCAA cheating, the cheating that goes on. There's still schools that are like Kansas that hopefully they'll be NCAA will be dealing with all that stuff. Now, paying players under the table and all that stuff can still happen, which is still illegal. Does this make it harder on the NCAA to chase all this stuff down or easier to track? I'll be honest with you. I don't know now that I think about it, because it's easy to look at this stuff. Was this done right? But you can still have the cheating under the table, I guess. So there's that.
Yeah. You probably are well aware that the NCAA is going through transformational change. I think what makes it hard for the NCAA is certainly the legal environment. That's going to make it very hard for them. I hope pre-NIL, the schools that were involved in the FBI scandal, they should be punished, right? I mean, those were not the rules then, and even then, it'd be a violation in today's world. And so, I hope that those programs involved really get hammered, quite honestly, because they made a mockery of the model, right? And it really devalues or puts everybody who's doing it the right way at a disadvantage. And so, yeah, I hope so. But I get your point. It's very challenging for the NCAA, even with the so-called above board things. The legal environment makes it very challenging, and people who just don't think that they're going to get involved, they're certainly going to try, right? They are trying to save, quite frankly, their organization. I promise you they're going to get involved if their legal environment allows them to.
I'm not sure I understand Tom's question. Who has input to NIL in regards to who and how much? I think he's probably asking what I asked earlier about individuals. How do you select them and how much they're paid? If you did miss that, Tom, you just have to go back and listen to that earlier. And you talk about doing it the right way. Indiana as a school has not been a school that has been involved in cheating scandals and all that. Yeah, they got in trouble with Kelvin Sampson over phone calls, which was a rule was changed the next year. But what is it that you guys have to make sure that you're doing when you say doing it the right way? What is it that you can't do that you got to make sure that you don't do? I know the obvious things. You can't say, hey, come here and we've got this NIL package for you, blah, blah, blah. I know that that's not legal, quote unquote. But what is it that you guys have to not do, stay away from, besides the obvious?
Yeah, I think there's two broad categories that we have to focus on. One, the NCAA's interim policy, and the making sure student athletes are actually doing something for what they're receiving. Making sure we're not providing opportunities contingent on enrollment. And there's a variety of other little details within there. And then you have the IU policy, right? Making sure we're abiding by IU's policy when we're doing, let's say in-person appearances, that they're not showing up in IU affiliated apparel. And so those are all the little details. But quite frankly, it's a fairly low bar, right? And that's just kind of where it is because of the legal environment. It's a very low bar. So thankfully, there's not, outside of those details that I mentioned, there's not a lot of other things that we really need to be super mindful of.
Absolutely, man. Well, Tyler, I can't thank you enough, brother. It's been a great conversation and very informative, and I look forward to continuing doing this again and continue to learn as the world continues to evolve, the college athletic world of college athletics, at least.
Yeah, there'll certainly be a collective here in the near future, probably at every FBS school, maybe even trickling down to the FCS level. And that's just the new reality. But again, we're gonna, if it's gonna be this way, if NIL is gonna be here, we're gonna do it the right way. But we're also gonna do it in a way that benefits everyone. And so I'm excited. Again, we've only been a little over a month, and I think last Thursday was exciting, and I think we'll continue to provide exciting opportunities.
Here's a good question. That's probably something I can't ask. How are they paid? Weekly, monthly, lump sum? Good question, actually, Scott.
Yeah, they are. The agreement specifies that the term of their compensation. A lot of it be on the front end. A lot of it will be on the back end once all terms are completed or deliverables are completed. And then there's some other little details within the agreement.
And since you don't have to or can't use it as an inducement to be in, attend, stay in a certain school, that means I'm eligible for NIL, right?
You are. So am I. So when I played basketball, my NIL value would have probably got me a free pizza one time, and so I wouldn't have really benefited.
That's from it. I don't know if I can get a slice, man.
Well, when I'm talking about free pizza, there was this company right outside campus that gave $3 cheese pizzas on Wednesdays, and so that's my $3 pizza.
I hear you, man. I'll take an NIL if you can squeeze one out anytime, though. Tyler Harris, I cannot thank you enough, man. Look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Had a great time.